everybody. I want to welcome you to another episode of Inside the Magic Circle. I'm Jason Augustus Newcomb, and today I am talking to a woman named Jennifer Vatza, who is a poison path witch and makes many different kinds of ointments, oils, elixirs, and various things, many of which involve some of the baneful herbs, the belladonna, the henbane, the datura, and various other things that have been called poisons for many generations, but actually have various kinds of psychoactive and spiritual properties. So Jennifer, welcome to the Inside the Magic Circle.
Hi, thank you for having me. And yes, I do love my poisonous herbs.
Me too. Actually, I'm very excited about this interview because I think I may have mentioned to you a few months ago that I actually used to grow a lot of I had a sort of a witch's garden going. It all kind of died off because I live here in Florida and it's really easy to kill things here because it's so hot. But so I'm very excited to talk to you about all these herbs and their purposes and their meanings to you and so forth. But I want to start at the beginning. How did you discover the path that you're on? What age were you, and how did you find out about it?
The poison path or left-hand path. Occulty things I've been interested in since I was a very young child. I mean, like literally, like I often joke that it was my grandmother's fault because she made me a witch costume and for Halloween 1980. So I'm like, I've been a witch since 1980. So I like to keep a little humor and levity to myself. I don't take myself super seriously, but like I'd always been interested in other, I had a lot of weird kind of paranormal experiences as a kid and things like that. And that just kind of opened my mind up to it. Because one of the, my first beliefs as a child was and I was like maybe 6 or 7, I believed in reincarnation. It made sense to me. I knew I lived before. I don't know who explains that to a Roman Catholic 6-year-old, but it made sense to me. So
did you have memories of a past life or just a sense that, yeah?
Memories, yeah.
Anything you'd like to share, or were you a witch in a previous life?
Flashes of things. I'm actually right now working on some past life regression with another practitioner for the completely different lives, because we've all multiple lives, multiple souls, multiple incarnations and things like that. But the ones that I was having as a child, I mean, they're just flashes of things that were not my lived experiences. And it felt like it was more like in I would say maybe the 1920s or something like that. And it was always of this young girl and her brother, and just in various settings and things like that. And it just would unfold over time, over many years, this kind of what I was seeing. I have notes I wrote on it somewhere because obviously this was a very long time ago and stuff like that. But that was something it was sort of the doorway, I guess, for me. And was the one thing that always stuck with me, whether I was practicing magic or just dabbling or interest or not doing anything at all, was knowing there's other stuff out there that science can't prove, we can't necessarily explain, but there's something to it,
So did you read about these things, or did you just sort of intuit and stay completely in a more intuitive place with it all?
I mean, when I was younger, it was more of an intuitive, because back in the 80s and 90s, it was like you were kind of like, well, what's in the local bookstore, or sure, what can I find in the library? Because we didn't have the internet.
Right. Although, I mean, at that time period, there was a that Raymond Moody, I think it was his name, had a number of best-selling books on past life, and also there were a lot of hypnotists who were doing past life, and also
I remember getting a book maybe when I was in high school, I think, on past life, and then I learned how to do kind of a little bit of my own going through the different states and doing some past life regression meditation stuff on my own. But that's where I kind of started to learn that a little bit. I forget the author's name. I remember it had a blue cover. I don't still have the copy of it, but got lost somewhere in the time spans of moving many times over the past 30 some years.
So at what point did you discover, I'll separate them for now because you mentioned them separately, the left-hand path and or the poison path?
The left-hand path was something I had felt myself drawn to, because like when I really started getting into witchcraft, maybe when I was in college and like the early-ish mid-90s, most of what was around back then when you could find groups was mostly Wicca-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it, but it just never, it just didn't really grab me in a way. And if Wicca works for you, it works for you. It just didn't work for me.
There's a few different definitions of left-hand path out there. I mean, there's sort of the, Church of Satan, and then there's religious Satanism, and then there's sort of tantric stuff. Like, where do you find yourself within that milieu?
I often jovial refer to the left-hand path as the choose your own adventure of magic.
I mean, I would say magic is the choose your own adventure of life too, right?
Right, yeah. So, but it isn't as rigid and structured. I mean, you can be a theistic Satanist or you can be a non-theistic Satanist. You can, work with goetic demons or work with, the fallen angels, Enochian magic, anything like that, any different pantheon that you want to work with.
Where do you place yourself within that though?
I'm probably leaning a little more towards theistic Satanism, but I'm just kind of open to experience in that. And I work a lot with like dark goddesses, and I work primarily with Lucifer, but I work with other entities, demons, etc.
So is Lucifer more important than the dark goddesses to you then? Or is he sort of the leader of the dark goddesses in your way of looking at things? Or?
I don't know. I mean, I think like I came to working with Lucifer through Lilith. So I would say Lilith is probably hierarchically maybe a little more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Subordinate?
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, more up there. I feel like, if they open the gates, she's got all the keys.
Okay.
So I'm called to work with different entities for different things. Sometimes they just show up. Mm-hmm. I haven't really done much work with King Paimon, but King Paimon showed up and was like, I would like a product line, please. I'm like, okay.
Do you find that entities are often encouraging you to create products for them then?
I've got a list.
I actually have that experience myself. That I'm sort of guided to create various things.
I'm currently working my way through the wealth demon section of products.
So let's talk about the poison path itself then, like that, and because I mean the left-hand path, although it is considered by many to be a dangerous path in some ways, the poison path is almost certainly somewhat dangerous in its structure. Do you have any people who have given you training in working with this stuff, or has it all been experimental?
It's been a little bit of both. I mean, I've read a lot. I'm an academic nerd, so like I have to do all the things. So I've read a lot of books. I've taken a lot of classes. I have different mentors and things like that. They'll be like, hey, so I'm doing this thing. Is this, is this right? I can ask like the little technical questions too when I'm like starting to do something new. Like when I was starting to make the tinctures and elixirs, I'm like, okay, I've got all this. I know all the things. I'm like, so, I'm like, what's the ratio? You want to dilute it with water,
Sure.
just so it's not, super potent and stuff. So just kind of like those little things. I'm like, I'm thinking it's 50-50. Is that right?
I don't want to get too far off into your products. Hey, we will talk about this at length, but just out of curiosity, the elixirs is that something that you're supposed to drink or to put inside you?
Yes. Now I use elixir in a more traditional herbalist expression, because sometimes people, will use elixir to mean different things. Sometimes an elixir can be an oil, like someone will use that name, and it's an oil that you put on a candle, or like a magical water is an elixir, but it's not those wouldn't be things you consume. So with the tinctures, they're grain alcohol based, and an elixir is a brandy with honey base.
So the tinctures and elixirs, you make them of the baneful herbs, though, don't you?
Yes.
So I know that they're not really controlled substances, but are there legal ramifications to offering those things?
It depends on the country you're in. some countries have different regulations when it comes to herbal products, especially like the medicinal nightshades. I think there's very specific, and it varies. Like Canada, it's like they're not entirely legal, but if you have like a prescription from an herbalist, then it's okay. And other countries, you know, nightshades aren't, you know, the medicinal nightshades like Datura, Belladonna, Mandrake, and Henbane, things like that aren't necessarily legal. But in the United States, there really aren't any major restrictions on them. They don't show up in drug tests, because I get that question sometimes. I'm like, the only drug test they'll show up in is if it is a very specific one, if they suspect you've been poisoned by, like, you know, the nightshade family or something. So like, unless you're like, oh my God, I need a belladonna plant, they're not going to test you for them.
So in my own experiments with atropine and scopolamine in the past, I noticed that, you know, I mean, they're used in the eye industry. What is the word I'm looking for? The optometry and ophthalmology, and to like blow up your pupils. And I noticed that even at a fairly small dose, it actually does often blow up my pupils. And one time when I experimented with a larger amount of it, I actually lost my ability to focus. I became extremely farsighted for about 3 or 4 days, and I was actually concerned because I didn't know, you know, that it would go away. So I don't know. I'm just like,
yeah, I mean, it's the atropine that they use when they dilate your pupils at the eye doctor, which is what's high in like belladonna and a lot of the nightshades. So a lot of times the visual effects you get from using like a flying ointment that has, you know, belladonna or something like that in it, it just, you know, it dilates your pupils down a little bit more, so like things are brighter, more vivid, but you're not actually having a hallucination. But you might have, I mean, with the experience you had, you might have a sensitivity to something or an allergy.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I was doing pretty uncontrolled experiments at the time. I was in my 20s. So anyway, but back to you. You were a teen who was sort of discovering they were in the left-hand path. Like, how did you discover that you know, messing around with medicinal herbs is what you really wanted to be doing?
I started out many years ago. I originally started out, I'm a certified aromatherapist. So I started out making like more therapeutic based concoctions and things, and my own skincare, making things for like, you know, this is something for stress relief or to help you sleep better or for anxiety and things like that. So
sorry, I just dropped some. So when did you discover the more, you know, wilder herbs, the darker herbs, and start incorporating those in what you were doing?
I started working a lot more heavily with the poison path, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay.
I think it's something that's always been in the back of my mind, because like I feel like, you know, the universe sends you these little messages that, you know, in mundane things you're doing, but you're not paying attention to. Like many years ago, I was heavily involved with the sort of virtual reality platform Second Life. And I had a clothing design business in it called Deadly Nightshade, which is the name for belladonna. And I was a gamer, so I played World of Warcraft. What were my professions? I was an alchemist and an herbalist. So I was always like running around picking herbs and making little potions and things. And I'm like, you know, that's kind of like, you know, looking back on it, it was like kind of the universe, like,
you were always being sort of guided in that direction.
Yeah. So through working with like essential oils and all this, I started working more with using herbs and incorporating them together, making herbal infused oils. And then as I started getting back into, because I was not practicing anything really spiritual, not like I am now, for a very long time. And, you know, as I kind of was in stages getting back into everything, you know, I just started making some witchy shit.
Well, it's really interesting. I like your design of your products. Like, yeah, I've got one right here. This is a hedge witch flying ointment, and it comes in a little box, and it's got a little little jar that has the actual product in it inside it. It's a nice presentation. And so, like, how much of the actual substances do you put into the product?
It varies. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, what I've found in like my research process that people don't document, at least not on the internet. Like, oh, put in, sometimes you'll see, like, if you go into older books, like, oh, put a pinch of henbane in and a pinch of mandrake and a pinch of that. I'm like, okay. So a lot of it isn't so much for like, closed practice type things. It's more like, we just don't want like someone to get a hold of this and like die.
Right.
Because there is a science to working with poisonous plants,
right,
to work with them in a way that's not going to kill you.
well, I noticed, I mean, aconite and hemlock are pretty regular ingredients in flying ointments. And I noticed that you actually have a hemlock product on your product line. And that's actually, I believe, what they used to kill Socrates. So,
I think it was poison hemlock. Yeah, poison hemlock is interesting because, like, topically it's fine, but it's not one you want to ingest.
Okay.
So some of them that have a little bit of difference. Aconite, I don't really work with because that one is like, out of all of like the baneful plants, aconite. I know some people who do work with it. It's particularly like, you looked at me wrong, I'm going to kill you now. Because you'll actually read stories like Gardner brushes past some aconite and dies.
Right. Oh yeah, I've heard it's quite poisonous sometimes. Depending
the thing with aconite is it's like, it's poisonous to inhale, to ingest, and like topically it can be, but it's very specific with the dose, with the amount that's in there.
So in creating these things, you obviously you came from more of a pharmaceutical or a aromatherapy, kind of a background. Where were you sourcing your herbs from originally, and are you still sourcing them from the same place? Do you grow herbs? Do you know people who are growing them? Because I know one of the things about herbal products is that they tend to be they vary in potency based on how they're grown, and
I have specific people I get things from, or specific places, just to kind of keep it consistency. And I usually buy things in bulk, so I'm getting like the same kind of quality from that. I live in the city right now, so I'm looking to move. So right now I'm growing some brumansias and daturas and stuff in my guest bathroom. Because I just don't have the space for it, and there's way too many outdoor cats around here. So,
I mean, I think sourcing your herbs from a reputable person is a perfectly like you said, it's almost a good way, because you know that you're getting the same product every single time, because they're going to be growing them in the same conditions.
And a lot of these, it's not that easy to get. Like, I have a specific person, like, out in the Midwest, I get, one of the Datura Anoxia from. I have someone down in the Caribbean who I get Brumansia from now. And there's a particular place in Spain I get my Belladonna from. So, and there's a farm in New York where I get my mandrake root, it's, and one of the things to point out about mandrake root is any of the mandrake root you're seeing in any metaphysical store is American mandrake root.
Right.
And it's not the same as European mandrake root. It doesn't have the fun entheogenic effects. And it's going to make you really sick. Because it's a purgative. So it's going to give you gastrointestinal unpleasantness.
Yeah, I didn't realize that people were trying to eat American mandrake. But yeah.
Well, but I mean, they sell it as mandrake root, but they don't.
Right. They don't distinguish.
But if you don't know, if you're not an herbalist, you're going to think that, oh, this, no.
So don't eat American mandrake.
No.
And you can tell because it doesn't really look like mandrake. It's
usually like ground up, because mandrake root usually they're larger pieces, and like to break them up, like I literally have to like put them in a bag and sit on the floor and pound them with a hammer to get them to break up into smaller pieces.
So let's talk for a second about your sort of spiritual path that you're on with all this. Do you view the plants as being sort of like spirit guides, or do you view the dark goddesses as being, you know, guiding your path in the way that you're creating things? How do you look at things?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely, I mean, whether you're looking at like plant spirits in sort of like a shamanic sense, in like a plant as like a plant healers and things like that. But one of the things I found fascinating with the poison path and the left-hand path is, especially when you're looking at the baneful Saturnian herbs, is a lot of them have they're like associated with the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that dark side of the plants that really correspond really well with the left-hand path. And I always found that really fascinating. And there's a great book even called The Plants of the Devil.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for sure, the you know, baneful herbs are called the baneful herbs because they're considered to be sort of dark things. You know, I mean, they obviously they trace their history back to well before people were talking about the devil. You know, they're sort of have been a presence in magic throughout European and even, you know, pre European, you know, history. So what I mean, do you feel like I like a lot of your product lines sort of are named after specific beings, and you mentioned that like there's some new ones that are coming through. Like what is the relationship between those beings and the products that you're creating from them?
I do it in a couple different ways. Because sometimes people will ask me to make products for entities that I haven't really done a lot of work with. So I'll do it one of two ways. Is I'll research, because there's a lot on there in correspondences, whether it's botanical or mineral colors, crystals, like especially like with the goetic demons. Although I swear they all can't be associated with frankincense, myrrh, and agarwood, but you know, the information is what it is. But so I'll take some of it is in the historical, you know, correspondences that I can find. Sometimes there's none of that. So, you know, kind of looking at, okay, well, what does this entity do? Like, what's their specialty, you know, as it were? Like, is it an underworld? Are they like a love, you know, like a love goddess or something like that? And then I'll kind of pull in some of the herbs and correspondences that match kind of the general ethos of what that entity represents. And, you know, have a little bit of, if there's historical correspondences. And then if I'm making something, like I did with the flying ointments, I have sort of a various entheogenic base that I'll use, and some of that is based on, you know, historical, you know, or just documented correspondences. Like a lot, like, you know, Lilith will be associated with like Belladonna or poppies or things like that. So same with like Lucifer.
So yeah, I was going to ask you, like, there's I noticed let's talk about the flying ointments for the moment, because those are the ones that I'm the most familiar with. It seems like there's like, you know, you have I don't know, 6 or 7 different ingredients that you kind of vary in between. Like what makes you choose to pull one out and put a different one in instead? Like it seems like it's sort of is there an intuitive process to it, or is it largely just you know, you're basing it off of the correspondences?
It's an intuitive process for some of it. Some of it does do with the correspondences. And there's other entheogenic herbs that I use in there as well that may not be necessarily, you know, toxic like belladonna, but still have really great entheogenic properties. Like I use a lot of blue lotus and things, or clipdaga, or some stuff that I don't use as much. Like I don't use the poison hemlock as much in them, but I do in some where it's associated with that particular entity. Yeah, a lot of it does come down to intuition, or sometimes the spirits whisper in your ears what they want.
Do you have people test them out after you've made them, or do you test them out on yourself after you've made them?
I'm my own guinea pig most of the time.
Yeah.
Still alive.
Is that your obituary is going to read a little bit too much flying ointment, and she left us.
Yeah. And that's when she turned into her own version of a hallucinogenic frog.
Right. So let's talk about the usage of them and how you recommend that people approach it. because you give a little bit of instruction, but and maybe you do some more in some of your videos. You obviously, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but you've got your own YouTube channel, and you actually do share a lot of information about what you're doing and what you're up to there. So that's a resource that people might want to check out. But while I have you here, like you know, there are all different places that people tend to apply these sorts of things, from their third eye to their whatever this is called, throat, to their genitals, like where temples, that's the word I was looking for. How do you recommend that people utilize these things that you've created?
I'm wary of the genitals only because like the essential oils could cause possible irritation.
Burning and stuff.
Sometimes not places you want to end up with, you know, that kind of a sensation. But most of the time I do like my wrists and my arms. That's usually primarily. I'll do my temples, third eye. Sometimes I'll do like back of the neck, heart chakra. And sometimes, I mean, with a lot of them, especially the ones that have the medicinal nightshades, they also have the benefit of helping with like acute pain. So like, you know, if you have knee pain, you can put it on your knee, and it will help with that as well, because it's not only that they have the magical and entheogenic properties, is that they also do have therapeutic, you know, traditional medicinal properties as well.
Is there an amount that you recommend for different purposes? Like if you're looking more for the joint pain or something like that, do you put more on, but keep it to your extremities, or
I mean, a lot of it's going to vary on everyone's individual physiology is different. So it's going to be different if you're like 5'1" and weigh 105 pounds versus 6'5" and 250 pounds. You know, it's you're going to have to adjust the dose based on and even your metabolic processes. Like I have a weird metabolism when it comes to medications, because somehow I manage to be an ultra rapid metabolizer, so some things go in and out of my system super fast, and a poor metabolizer, so sometimes things just stay in my system for much longer than they should and accumulate. So there are some unknowns there, but that's why I usually recommend, you know, put a little bit on, see how you feel, and, you know, reapply. I usually say wait 20 minutes because that just gives it time to absorb, so you're not just like, you know, all greased up and oily.
Is there a particular, if you're looking for the entheogenic effect, is there a particular space that you recommend? I mean, is the wrists the best place for that, or is that?
I mean, you get good absorption on your arms. You know, a little bit like on the third eye, on your temples, in that area. But I mean, in general, wherever you put them, they're gonna, you know, get into your system and start, you know, working there. Now, one thing I always like to point out, because I always get these questions, it's like, no, you're not going to trip balls. No, it's not like ayahuasca. You know, no, it's not like that time you like the trip report you saw on a crazy YouTube video where someone ate a handful of datura seeds and, you know, lost 3 days and, you know, sold all their furniture and, you know, moved to a Mars colony or something.
What if you take the whole thing and just smear it all over your whole body? At that point,
you're gonna be very oily. I mean, I would think. I mean, I have friends of mine, you know, use them and stuff. I know that some have used a lot of it at once, like maybe like half the jar or something. They're still standing. So I would say like it depends again on your physiology. Like some things make me tireder. Like the ones I have that use fly agaric mushrooms always make me really sleepy. So I would probably, if I smeared all the fly agaric one on me, I'd probably sleep for 2 days. Yeah. Okay. I might have some crazy wild dreams and astral experiences though. So, yeah.
And when you're utilizing them, do you do any kind of ritual work with it, or is it just sort of like you just put it on and go wherever you go?
I'll use it for a couple different purposes. Like if I'm doing, because I'm ADHD Gemini, so sometimes it's a little noisy up here. So I will like put it on before I do like any kind of meditation or astral travel, or sometimes I just put them on before I go to bed so I can have some awesome dreams. And I'll do them before rituals and things like that as well.
But there's no specific sort of ritual way in which you approach it, like, you know, doing a preliminary sort of temple opening before you begin, or purifying yourself or the ointment or anything like that. There's nothing that you recommend like that?
I tend to do
obviously
a
anyone
lot
can do
more,
what they want, but
yeah, I mean, you can always do what you want. I tend to do a lot more of my work at night just because I'm so busy, like getting orders out and trying to get things to the post office during the day. So, but I tend to be the type of person who takes baths at night. So like I'll do like maybe my ritual bath first and then, you know, put it on. Because also too, if your skin's warm, you're going to absorb faster. So if you've just taken a bath, I wouldn't suggest putting it on and then taking a bath, because you're just going to kind of wash it off. And it, you know, or well, I mean, it might make it absorb faster. Like usually what they say is like, if you're having a skin reaction to it, wash it off with cold water and soap versus warm water and soap.
Good advice. Do a lot of people have, I mean, it doesn't have it would only be if you were like allergic to one of these things.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you have sensitive skin or something like that, you know, or if there's essential oil in it that, you know, you're allergic to or something.
Right. So do the entheogenic bits of this, do they come from an oil that's been extracted, or do they come from the herbs that directly in some sort of an alcohol bath or a water bath?
I infuse everything into the oils over low heat over a period of time for the flying ointments, and then it's mixed. Then I, you know, decant everything, strain it, and then put it into mix it with the beeswax, so it gets the solid form. With the elixirs and tinctures, those are alcohol decant. Yeah, they're soaked in, you know, the alcohol bath for like up to a month. And you know, then they're, you know, strained and whatnot and bottled. So
those are going to probably be more strong, right? Since they have that, the stuff has been, first of all, it's going into your stomach,
yes.
as opposed to your skin. Plus, it's been, you know, it'll get stripped out more by the alcohol, or a lot of that stuff will get stripped out more by the alcohol than by the oil. So
yeah, and again, with it being ingested, it's something like you have to be very careful on, you know, knowing like what they refer to, like in a lot of things, is the LD50. It's the lethal dose, the dosage at which it would be lethal to 50% of the population, and we're and not getting close to that, you know. So it's kind of like
there's like a one dropper full kind of a dose. I mean,
yeah, that's usually what I do. I mean, some people have done more and they're still alive. I always like to point it out, they're still alive, you know. Like sometimes I'll do a dropper of that, and then I'll put like one of the tinctures, and then I'll put on some flying ointment and stuff like that.
What's the difference other than the you know, obviously the solid versus liquid state? What's the difference between the oil and the ointment?
The flying oils I did specifically because, I mean, all of my ointments are like multi-component, like they're much more elaborate, I guess, because a lot of places will sell, this is the Belladonna ointment, or this is the Datura ointment, or something like that, whereas mine are usually combinations of multiple things. So I just decided to do the flying oils for anyone who wanted that kind of experience. And basically it's the same process, just without the beeswax. Okay.
And just a single, you do isolates. Didn't you have like a Belladonna oil and a Datura oil, or am I?
Yeah. For the flying oils, I'd have like the Belladonna one, the Mandrake one.
And are those just Belladonna, or is it mostly Belladonna and a little bit of other stuff in there?
No, it's just Belladonna.
Okay,
it's just straight up Belladonna, or straight up Datura, you know.
So someone could purchase that and take some beeswax and make their own.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it would be a very tiny amount of beeswax, but yes.
Right.
Like what? I would have to math.
No, I mean, I just mean like, you know, if someone likes your product but wants to make their own sort of variation on it, they could buy that from you and mess around with
it. Absolutely. And I also make some herbal smoking blends and things like that.
I saw that. And what is that? Like how do you utilize that? You put it in a pipe and
yeah, I mean, you can either use like rolling papers, or I have a nice little amethyst pipe that I use for mine. I find it works a little better in the pipe. But again, it's just different modes of taking in, the different herbs and stuff like that. Because again, or I mean, with the smoke ones, you could even use it as incense, if you wanted to. But I like the smoke blends. Just kind of adds a slightly different, feel to them.
And so what is the difference in terms of, okay, so our intent here, we're talking about the use for magical purposes, for having, connecting with the liminal realms and the spiritual realms and so forth. What is the difference in terms of opening up between those different things? We've got basically three different things, the ones that are in an oil base, the ones that are in an alcohol base, and the ones that are smoked. Like, is one stronger than the other? Is one, what if people are trying to figure out where they want to place themselves in experimenting with stuff, where's the place to begin?
I mean, I would begin probably with the flying ointments. I think that's usually going to be probably the better gateway to sort of seeing how you feel, because I mean, it can be a weird experience at first, you're not really sure what to expect. And what should even within the flying ointments, like I have ones that are I have ones that are completely non-toxic, like ones that are just wormwood and mugwort or like lotus flower based or something like that. So because you can get those entheogenic properties from non-toxic herbs as well.
So if someone is looking to have a vision, what can they expect as a result? What does the ointment bring, and what is required from the practitioner? What's the
it's trying to think a good way to describe it, because it's like I do them so often, I use it so often that it's like sometimes it's just kind of like my normality now. I'm trying to think back to how it was when I first started experimenting with them. It's an interesting experience, like kind of looking back to where I was when I first started using flying ointments. And you do get that sort of light, kind of airy feel, like, I mean, you're not going to feel like, super high, like you just smoked like the best weed in the world or anything. Maybe a little, but you'll have some feeling, sensational feelings and stuff like that. I mean, I do make ones for like sex magic type things as well that are more aphrodisiac based. So that's going to have an entire different kind of pathway there for you. Because those are fun.
My wife wants me to get some of that. So anyway, if we're utilizing it for ritual, and we're invoking a deity, perhaps the one that's mentioned on the thing, and how long is that experience going to last with the entheogenic properties?
I mean, I would say depending on how much you apply, and if you add multiple applications, like anywhere from like 2 to 6 hours, even, because it's gonna, even you do the ritual, you go to bed, you're still gonna kind of have those things. It's still gonna be in your system and stuff like that, which I find it helps for even doing things like divination, for doing like if you're doing any kind of spirit channeling, for like it's just kind of like they're there in your ear going, the whole time. So whereas that was something I couldn't really do all that well before, or I didn't know how to recognize it as such, because I find a lot of it helps newer practitioners that don't necessarily know how to go about getting it's a tool to help them, if they're not skilled at astral travel or meditation, or just kind of being, it opens up your awareness, I guess is a good way to put it, to the spiritual realm in a way that, just kind of mundanely sitting here, you might not notice.
Are there any things that you would recommend practicing along with it, or not recommend practicing along with it? I mean, is there is sort of drumming useful or not useful? Is casting circles useful or not useful? What do you?
I mean, I've found it useful in most situations. I mean, I love listening. Like, I'll put on like some. I use a lot of music in my ritual work, even if it's astral travel. Like, I have endless playlists on YouTube, just of whether you're listening to like the demonic end chants, or like binaural beats, or ambient energy cleansing music or whatever, or whatever music I happen to be listening to at the time, or guided meditations even. So that's my preference. I like to have some kind of, because also living in the city, it drowns out the people down the street listening to crappy music, and the police cars going by, and the bus and whatnot.
Screaming kids.
Usually adults, but occasionally.
No, that's what I have, is lots of screaming.
Yeah.
So, do you see there as being an evolutionary, or sort of a transformation that's possible within this poison path that allows you to evolve as a being more in some sort of spiritual or evolutionary way?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like it really helped to fast track my ability, because when I first started, like I was like, I don't know how, I can't meditate. I'm like, especially for people who have ADHD or any kind of neurodivergent, because we're all different in that sense, and it really helped me to be able to be like, okay, I'm just going to sit down and maybe try to meditate for like 5 minutes, which seemed like 5 years to me. But it's also the kind of the learning process of, okay, there's a start, you just kind of let it go. Okay, oh, I forgot to do that. I'll just let it go. And eventually you kind of train yourself. And now I can just kind of sometimes get lost for like 3 or 4 hours, and just, it feels like 20 minutes passed. I look at the clock, I'm like, I was gone for 3 hours there. That was interesting.
Do you feel like there's any people that utilizing these plant tools that it's not recommended, that it wouldn't be good for?
I mean, I would always check if you have allergies, because there are some contraindications. Like, obviously, if you're like pregnant, nursing, trying to get pregnant, you don't want to be using the toxic stuff. There are certain medical conditions. I know with the medicinal nightshades, like if you have glaucoma, you're supposed to avoid them. And I forget off the top of my head the medical reason why. It might have to do with the with the atropine dilating the pupils. So there are some medical contraindications. I mean, I talk, a lot of my customers, give me feedback and stuff like that. A lot of my friends use them as well. So, I try to err on because again, I'm an academic nerd, and I have to be like, know every possible, thing ever about what type of interactions people could have. And especially, it's good to be aware of, like, okay, this is, a severe, I'm having an allergic reaction versus this is weird, I don't like the way this feels reaction,
This might be a little bit of a question that I don't know if you'll feel like you can answer, but I'm just curious about it. You're on the left-hand path, and there's lots of people that are on more sort of underworld paths in various ways, that this kind of stuff. Do you feel like the entheogenic plant substances are useful for people who are more on a right-hand path, or like angelic magic? Do you feel like there's still a place for those?
Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, I haven't done a lot of angelic magic. I mean, I've worked with Archangel Raphael on healing things before, but I am looking more in my infinite free time, exploring, all the different things, kind of learning a little bit more about the Clefaic aspects and the Enochian aspects. I'm kind of fascinated with the Book of Enoch, and looking at, I like the fallen angel lore and the Nephilim and all that, and Watchers and all that stuff. So again,
right, but all of that again falls into more of that underworld sort of sonic kind of energy.
Still, I mean, if you're working, right-hand path, I haven't worked the right-hand path in a very long time, so I'm like trying
so I mean, for instance, there's a lot of people working in one way or another angelic crystal magic these days. Whether you're talking about the Trithemia system, or there's various versions of it out there, where you're basically calling upon now what's coming to you is of varying things in reality, but the people are earnestly trying to sort of stay on the right side of whatever path they're on. I'm on my own path myself that's not quite in alignment with that, but but I'm just curious, like, are these plant substances something that can call up the angelic realm as well, or are they more geared towards more the underworld realm?
No, I mean, I think they could be used to work with any entity, because I get asked that from other practitioners that work with, say, like Papa Legba or things like the of the Vodun, that aspect. I don't work within that practice, but I'm like, okay, if you want something that's going to be for working with the Loa, maybe you'll want to use this type of product or something like that. So, it's transferable in a sense that I might not have a specific thing for that entity as of yet, but here's, okay, looking at kind of the rubric of what kind of thing you would want to use to work with the angelic realm. So you could work with something like, the liminal states one, or the lotus streams one, or something like that. That's a little more, what's the word? I feel like lighter energetically in that.
So you feel like working with, say, like the Hedge Witch or the Lilith, flying over and then calling up angels, that would be not the right choice, or
Lilith one, not so much, but like the Hedge Witch one, yeah, you could absolutely do that. Because that one's a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little more like, just even keel grounded, in that sense that it's not necessarily like for a very specific intention, like this is for underworld workings, or this is for working with this particular type of thing. It's a little more of an all purpose. So it would be more transferable in that sense.
So on the other side of the scale, which one is your darkest one? Which one's the one for really digging deep into the shadow realm?
I do have a shadow work one. I find things that have black henbane in them really just kind of pull you down into that shadow work, whether you want to go there or not. I mean, some of the demonic ones I have. My personal favorite, my two personal favorite ones are the Lilith and Lucifer ones. Those are the ones I use probably the most.
What's the difference between them?
It's a lot of it's just the correspondences and associations and things like that from working with them. They both have similar bases to them, but those are the two that I use, because what I found when I started experimenting with them, especially because I had come out of having been like very atheistic and non-theistic for a very long time. So the idea of working with entities for me was a little like, all right, I guess I can do this, maybe. So, and for people who are new to working with it, the way I created them was to kind of like, almost like attune you to that particular entity through the combination of herbs and correspondences and stuff that I used. I guess attune is probably the word I'm looking for there.
So coming from an atheistic background and then turning towards the left-hand path, what do you view these entities as being? Are they the creators of the universe? Are they things in the collective unconscious of humanity? How do you see them?
It's something I'm working on very deeply, because right now they've a lot of times they give you homework and things. So right now I'm working with very like unnamed primordial energies and entities that are kind of like revealing to me the origin story of things, like the things that existed before we had stuff we gave names to, and like the ideas and archetypes and things that built each of these entities. Now, I kind of look at them as energetic masks in a way, that you have a lot of, well, if it's this and this culture and pantheon, it's this, that, because, take a goddess of love and war. They're going to be in every pantheon.
Sure.
There's someone that fits that mold. Well, how is that? Why is that? So I feel like it comes from like an energetic mass of sort of, I think it's a lot of it for me. I just look at everything as energy, frequency, and vibration, and it all comes together. Yeah.
That's a valid answer. And quite a few people, that's where they are, and other people have a different way of looking. Everyone's different. I'm just curious about where people's heads are at, because that's kind of the reason that I wanted to do this. And so when you're working with things, you mentioned that you're kind of having voices in your ear, you're kind of having things teaching you things. Are these like direct visions? Are you in a dream state interacting with something? How is this information coming to you?
It comes in waves and various ways. Sometimes it'll be in dreams, sometimes it'll be like I will have done a ritual and then I'm just sitting there afterwards and they're kind of like speaking through me or like channeling that information from them. It's not kind of like a big booming voice shouting in the corner, whatever the message is. Astral travel, deep meditation, working with like divination, sometimes with divination, because I just finished up my Reiki level 2 certification, and holy hell, that really like boosted like my psychic abilities out at like off the charts. Amazing. Like even if you don't want to practice Reiki, I would recommend getting Reiki training. Just, I don't know what it is with that, but it's like literally since I started doing that in February, it's just opened everything up.
So on a scale of things, where would you place this sort of plant entheogenic magic and Reiki? Like which one is more transformative in your mind at this point?
I feel like they're both enhancers. Like maybe Reiki is a little more like universal energetic, whereas the plant magic, the plant medicine is going to kind of enhance that experience and maybe make you a little more open to different experiences there, or being able to see and visualize things. Because when I first started doing astral travel, it's like, I was just kind of getting like movement, shapes, shadows, maybe a little bit of light and color. And then like when I started using like incorporating the flying ointment, so it was like boop, no, crystal clear images, able to, maneuver about and experience things at a much faster pace. Like I feel like it helped push me through my practice a lot faster.
Just out of curiosity, since you brought it up a few times, just like left-hand path, there's a few different definitions of it. Astral traveling, there's a few different definitions of it. There's like the sort of school that is the out-of-body experience school, that where you're doing something at that liminal threshold in order to try and like basically go into an entirely different state in which you're no longer aware of your body. And then there's the more sort of Western Golden Dawn oriented folks who see it more as like you're traveling, but you still might be able to talk, you still might be able to reconnect with your body. Which one of those two are you talking about when you're talking about astral traveling?
Sometimes both, because I've been able to especially when I'm working with different entities through astral travel, I'm like, okay, guys, sometimes I have to like get something to drink or pee. So, so just kind of be able to like be functional, but still in that state of like just being kind of like you're attached to your body, but not in a hyper aware sense that you normally would be. It's like you can do the autonomic function to go like stumble from the bedroom to the bathroom and back and not miss a beat, but maybe going to work and driving my car there, not so great.
That's a really good question, a safety question on these things. Do you feel like are there should people not drive when they've messed around with them or
but the flying ointments, the only thing I would say is because they dilate your pupils, you probably would want to avoid it because it might just be like really freaking bright when you're driving. Especially if it's sunny outside or even at night, you're going to get all the lights and stuff like that from other cars and stuff. So
what about the elixirs and the smoking stuff? Because that's going to, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same. It would be the same thing. You don't feel like
there's that much of a difference? Because I mean, I'd feel like the smoking mixture would probably be the very strongest, and then the elixir would be a little less strong than that, and then the flying ointments would be underneath that in terms of like the amount.
Probably, yeah. That would be a correct. That would kind of be how I view it. But also, again, it's going to depend on how much you use of each of them. I try to sell things in smaller packages, so you can't just be like, "Oh, I've got a gallon of nightshade elixir."
And you would recommend not doing that, right?
No, please don't sue me.
Yeah. So have you had any legal repercussions from offering all this stuff? No, nothing at all.
No.
Oh, that's great. So what are you
But I
working
also
on?
have a great attorney, so you know.
Okay. So
which is the best magic tool that any practitioner can have is a good attorney.
Yeah, that's good advice. Particularly if you're going to be
doing business contracts and stuff like that. So many people, you know, I see a lot of people on the handshake deal and the freebie stuff and, you know, perks and whatnot. Then, you know, something happens, drama occurs, and it's a whole thing.
Sure.
I'm like,
I mean, I feel like magical community tends to be, you know, there's a lot of sort of combat that goes on in that world as it is. So, So what are you working on right now? What's the next thing that Jennifer Vatza is going to be coming out with?
Oh, good Lord. I don't even know at this point. I'm working on, I just released, I've been doing a lot of experiments using radionics boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing, I don't have any handy right now because they're across the room. But I've been doing radionics charged crystals. So what I've been doing, I probably have like a crystal I can show though. Well, so like, you know, I'll take a crystal and use the radionics box to sigil charge it with the energy and energetics of that particular entity. So that's something I've been working on, and I just released the first sort of collection of them individually. And I was sending out testers to people to see like, you know, what they thought of them, like what the energy what was, and you know, the feedback I got was really great from them. So so I have a few more that I'm working on for releasing for that. I also am working on over there. I've been brewing up some magical protection sprays, specifically geared towards like, you know, for practitioners and stuff like that. Because I have like energy cleansing sprays and like smudge sprays and stuff like that I use because I cannot for the life of me stand the smell of burning sage. So hold on one second.
Some people can't.
Can you not barf right now?
Is that your cat?
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, he was coughing. You okay, buddy?
Well, that's nothing. You should watch my interview with Steve Sabato. His kid comes in and out of the frame for the first like 10 minutes. He's just like keeps like ninjaing into the frame. So your kitty barfing is that's just barfing. Yeah.
Well, everyone loves Corey. He's got his whole little fan club there. So yeah, that's those are the two things right now that are coming down the pike. But who knows? I am working on wealth demon oils, and now that we summoned a wild Corey who has to make Corey in every single thing I do because he has a fan club. I'm gonna have to make him a little like kitty YouTube video, keeping up with Corey.
Hi, Corey. So, your wealth oils, are they also entheogenically based, or are they something completely different?
No, those are like more just standard ritual oils that I make.
Sort of like a hoodoo or
oil.
Like,
you know, here's what this is. This is a mind control one. So they're just you know, standard oil, like ritual oils that you would use like to anoint candles when you're burning them, or however you want to use them in rituals. Some people will anoint themselves with them. Some have a little bit more of like an attraction oil or something you could wear kind of as like a perfume in a sense, even though it's a magical oil. Don't recommend wearing doom oil, just saying, you know.
Yeah, probably not.
Not so great actually. But you know, you can use them in that sense in your ritual processes, or you know, for anointing stones or pictures, or making, you know, little mojo bags or whatever. You know, I have a lot of those, so I've made ones for working with specific entities as well as like incense blends and whatnot. So I have a few coming out for, because I called a meeting of the Greater Association of Wealth Demons, and they gave me a list of things to make. So like, well, that'll make you money. So
Sure, yeah. I mean, you mentioned having a day job as well. When do you see that going away and this becoming a full-time thing for you?
That's a fun question. I don't know, because healthcare is nice. And it's also expensive. It's been easier to manage in the whole COVID era because I've been working from home for over a year now.
Sure.
So I can manage that. I don't know what's going to happen when they expect us to go back to the office in July. A lot of people, because I work for a university, so there's a lot more flexibility and stuff like that. I'm also like working on moving out of the city, and there's a whole lot of moving parts. Hence the meeting of the Greater Wealth Demons Collective.
Right.
Like, y'all just do your things and make all this stuff happen.
Make it all work out, please. So Jennifer, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Is there anything else that you, if you were going to be giving a piece of advice to a person who is just getting started, either in working with magic in general or working particularly with, developing herbal or entheogenic, products or just things for themselves, what would you advise a new person?
I always want to say, have fun and enjoy what you're doing. It's okay to laugh in rituals and bring some levity in, because I've had some freaking hilarious experiences working with demons because they're weird. And that's the one thing, is like sometimes people are like so super serious about things that you kind of lose sight of the fact that Belial just showed up as a leprechaun and shit's about to go sideways.